Okay, do you have the sheets that were sent out? Do you have them? Okay, let's do piece by piece slowly. But first, the topic is going to be try to understand more of a conceptual understanding of what tshuva means, and it seems to be something which is more than possible. It actually seems to be very possible if you realize what it really is. Okay, let's start with a quote of the Meiri in the base of Bchira on Rosh Hashanah Daf Zayin Amud Beis. That's the first source there. Meiri writes, Afal Pi, although it is true, Shebachol Yom V'Yom, that daily, every day, Ra'ui la'adam lefashresh ma'asav, it is worthy for a person to do introspection to his actions, to check his things, v'lashuv midarko ha'ra'ah, and to revert back from his evil path. See, the issue is not actions, but path. We will see that shortly. It's a Lashon HaRambam, that the idea is to repent from your path. We'll see in a minute what that means. Kamosham Ruzal, as Chazal told us in Avos and Perik Beis Mishnah Yud in the second chapter of Pesach's Avos, 10th Mishnah, Shuv Yom Echad Lifnei Misascha. One should repent, or rather return, one day prior to death, and that means to say, since you don't know what it is, it means B'chol Yom V'Yom. So we understand that Chazal tells us it's a worthy thing to do tshuva on a daily basis because you never know what. But specifically at this time, and you said it's I mean to say Rosh Hashanah, which obviously leads to all this period of time that we are now starting. It is worthy to be wakened much more. The Chazal told us there, Mashal, this is a Mashal, Gimel Svarim Niftachim B'Rosh Hashanah. 3 books are opened up on Rosh Hashanah, Ala Rishoim, Ala Tzadikim, Ala Beinanim. What does that mean? So Ratzano Lomar, this is only a Mashal, there's no books there, so we write the Shana Tov, Tikasev, V'Sichasev. Brother dear, there's no book there. What does it mean? It's a Mashal, Ratzono Lomar, Shekol Echad Ve'echad Nidan Lifi Ma'asav. That's all it means. It means that every person is, that's why there are 3 books. It means that the 3 books of decisions. There's a book of decisions of what the Ma'asav of a Tzadikim, and the book of decisions according to Lifi Ma'asav of Rishoim, Rizot Tzadikim going to Beinanim. We should be on the Mishnah. Therefore, we understand this is a day which there's a Yom HaRadin. Therefore, one should wake up from his slumber, to check in his action, do a serious introspection, and to come back, that which he has in his Averos. And if one is delinquent and is lethargic when it comes at this period of time, specifically the time prior to Rosh Hashanah, and this is what we're talking about, he says something very strong. He has no chelek in God, the Lord of Israel. Now that is a very, very sharp language. Almost saying out of the fold. The person not engaging in introspection, ultimately some sense of regret and commitment, recommitment. One would say the renewal of vows, as we use in our Western language. At this period of time, ein lo chelek b'elokei Yisrael. First of all, why? Why is that so sharp? What does it mean? We'll see. Let's look at the source base. In source base, the source of that language is a famous pasuk in Shmuel Beis when there was a revolt against the monarchy of David by Sheva ben Bichri.
Himself.
Where the pasuk writes of the Vashamni Krai Ish Lial. There was a terrible person. Sheva ben Bichri. His name was Sheva. Ish Yemini,
he has no room.
Tribe, but
the yeshiva is
born to convene people.
No, I can't because I listen to another yeshiva, but he says the yeshiva is changing its format. They're not going to allow people to.
Someone please be on mute. There. Ein lanu chelik b'David. We have no chelik in the Malchus of David. V'lo nachla lon ben Yishai. We have nothing to do with this monarchy. Ish la'alav Yisrael. Every Israelite should go back to his own private tents and that's to gather around the monarchy of David. We see here from the language of the Meiri that a person which is not do tshuva in on Rosh Hashanah time, it's not a question of a bittul mitzvah saseh. It's a question he simply is mafkia himself from oil malchus shamayim. That's the language here. We say ein lo chelik b'elokei Yisrael. It's obviously a play on the pasuk in Shmuel of ein lanu chelik b'David v'lo nachlav ben Yishai. Mean to say you're pushed a perik oil malchus shamayim. That is pretty heavy, implying that Kabbalah Rosh Hashanah is supposed to be a day of Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim by not doing tshuva. Specifically, it's not because there's an issue of a din and you're afraid who knows what's going to happen. That is not the issue on the table. The issue on the table is the mechayev of tshuva specifically on Rosh Hashanah, and this period leading to Rosh Hashanah is the idea of Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim. And a person which doesn't misrasha b'davar hazeh, I say this very clearly, from this period of time, I mean from Rosh Chodesh Elul going leading to Rosh Hashanah, I still, what are you going to do tshuva on Rosh Hashanah? Brother, I'll tell you a nice story. I was once supposed to be an aide at a wedding of a person which I'm very close to. He learned by me many years. And his uncle was Rabbi Avram Shapira, Zechron Levracha, the Rav Rashi of Israel, and Rosh Yeshivat Merkaz Arab. So he's an old dayan. So when he before the dinners by a get, the Edom were supposed to be Maharer B'tshuva before they sign, because they should Chalil, they should be Edom Sherim. So I'm about to go to sign the ksuba and about to go to the chuppah to be an aid. He tells me Taher B'tshuva. Brother dear, I says Elo Yazor. What do you mean Elo Yazor? What do you want to do, to think they have a tshuva within 2 seconds? It doesn't work that way. You should have called me up a month ago. So he says, Azata Pasul. So I says, okay, I'm leaving. I have no problem. I don't need this. I started walking back. He says, Bo, tachzor, ata kasher. He says, if you really take it seriously, Mustami, you've been doing it on your own. Okay? That's all b'tshuva. It's a joke. You know, what do you think this is, like the flip a hamburger? It doesn't work that way. It takes, when I say the Rambam Meiri says you have to do tshuva on Rosh Hashanah, it means you have to start working on it from Motzi Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei A to do tshuva on Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei Aleph. But L'chol HaPachas B'mei HaRachman of Elul, that's why we have to start with this now. If not, the B'chayv of tshuva in Elul leading to Rosh Hashanah is not the Aveira, and not a mitzvah of tshuva per se. It's pushed the din of Kabbalah's oil malchus shamayim. That's muchach in the Meiri. And if you don't do it, you're a peirik oil malchus shamayim. And now he explains why. Why specifically at this period of time? Why not the whole year? Shekol hashana enis oirus matzur kol kach. It's not people, the way life is, the way it is. There's nothing that wakes us up to this period of time. But this is a period of time which somehow it's in the air, so to speak, in the religious air. People start thinking about it. I know the yeshivas become depressant. Someone sent me a link of Rav Ezrachi standing over a stender and screaming, Elul, Elul. It sounded very depressing. It sounded like Eli Tzion to me. You know what I mean? I think Elul is a great month. God is hugging us. Say, guys, I love you. Why don't you come a little closer? That's the Osiris. The Osiris is, hey, I'm willing to talk. Here, I'm talking to you. Come on, show up, brother. Okay? So this is what, but I don't know, the Litvikas take it away to, I don't know where, to depressants. I think they all should take the Luxetine. Anyway, so this is what it says. Even Midas Hadin understands, unbelievable idea. Even the Midas Hadin, the Katega, is Mishai. She gives up. He doesn't really think that people are going to do this totally, a whole year. It's Roy Lekach, but even the Midas Hadin gives up. Listen, let's not expect it. It's a very beautiful Meiri. God, but Midas Dino, he doesn't expect it the whole year. But from this period of time, but this is already a time where there's this Oirus Lekach. Why is this Oirus Lekach? Because it says this is, if you read Zohar Kodesh from Rosh Chodesh Elul, is his Galus Yudgim Amidas Arachamim. This is the point of time where somehow there's a sense of feeling, not just psychologically, it's also emerson metaphysics, where there's a kirvas elukim, where God actually is megala yudgil midas harak. Listen, I'm here for you. Well, just come. This is what the Eitz Chaim writes, quoted also in the Bach, but it's found in earlier. It's found in Eitz Chaim. That Elo is Rosh Tevis, Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li. People quote a Bach, but Lamaisa it's already Reb Chaim Vital in the Ari, which is slightly earlier, not much earlier, but slightly earlier, because which is Anila Doidi V'Doidi Li. This is Rosh Tevis Elo, because this is the time when God comes to us, and therefore we should come to Him. So, so this is the idea of Meptans the Adzman. And this I understand what Chazal said. Ein bezin shemala nichlasin ledin. What bezin the mala doesn't go to din. Achikachu bezin shemata as a chodesh. Once bezin shemata is mekadesh as a chodesh, which means to say what does the Chazal means? Rashosh Tishrei. That's the point of time where bezin shemala is ready to go is nichlas ledin. After we have prepared ourselves. We understand what's coming ahead of us, then the Keshbach is Oymid Ladin. In other words, the Midas Adin is only shoylet terribly on a person which hasn't done tshuva by Rosh Hashanah. And I repeat, since this is the Chodesh Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, it means to say that we have to start preparing ourselves, in order that by Rosh Hashanah we'll finally be able to actually Oymid Lefnei HaMakom and do tshuva. So all ones understand what is this tshuva about. One thing that comes out from this Meiri is one thing which is clear. That the mechayiv of tshuva is kabbalas oil malchus shemayim, because that's what uses the pasuk. It doesn't just say you don't do tshuva, you're mevatla mitzvah. You don't do tshuva, you're a chayte. You don't do tshuva, you're going to fry, you're going to lose bedin. No, he doesn't say that. He says ein lechelik v'lekei Yisrael equals you're a perik oil malchus shemayim. Muchach mikan that the mechayiv of tshuva is kabbalas oil malchus shemayim. That's what comes out from this meiri. If you want the biblical source for the chayva of tshuva, at least in this time of Rosh Hashanah, whether this also goes with tshuva b'chlal, or specifically at this point of time from Elul and further, here there's a mechayiv called Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shamayim. We have to understand what this refers to, and what the source is, and how this relates b'chlal to the din of tshuva all year. Here's another piece. Now, this is found in Rambam. Go to your source, Gimel, in Rambam Hichas Tshuva, Perik Beis, Halacha Vav. Afal pi chad tshuva v'atzaka yafala olam. Although repentance and the tzaka, the crying for tshuva, for slicha and mechila, doesn't mean tzaka. By the way, I need a few points up in my portfolio. It means tzaka, the tzaka of rebuilding your personality through tshuva. Works. It's always lefala olam. Ba'aseres hayamim sheben Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim. Yafe b'yoser. This is the best point of time. Umiskabelas himiyad. It's accepted immediately. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, Yeshu Hashem b'himatzo. So we see the idea of the Meiri from the other side. Here we saw in the Meiri that God doesn't expect much until that, but do what it takes that by Rosh Hashanah you should already be b'tshuva. Here he adds a nakuda that it also works. It's faster, it's easier. Not only is it you should be doing it specifically by then, but it's actually easier at this point in time because once again, because God is here, He's available. Yeshua Hashem b'matzo. This means He's available. What does it mean, miskabelis miyad? So here the Ramchal explains something very formidable. The Ramchal explains that you must understand that take the year as a building which has been built. God has created a structure based on the actions of man, his past, his personality, etc. And this is the interaction. This is the interaction you will have with him based on the structure which was set by Rosh Hashanah. If you basically lack certain tools of receiving the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so okay, this is what's going to happen. Now, if you do tshuva during the year, you're asking to restructure a structure was set in place. If you live in Israel, shiputzim. is a pain in the neck. Okay, when you do changes in the original plan of the contractor, when you build your house, that's easy because he does custom tailors it according to your need. But if you're asking him to destroy and create new things, that's a pain. Whoever went through this, as myself knows, this is a pain in the neck. This is another kosher ma'od. You understand that tshuva during the year is the equivalent of telling God, "Be my mishapet, be my like change the plan which was and create a new reality." They're ikuvim in that. That isn't simple. That is asking God to walk away from the normal anhaga. It's like asking him for a miracle. You don't. That's not easy to do. He has to see how it can be done, whether you're worthy, etc. But you understand, in these 10 days, these are the 10 days in which the structure is being formed and planned and built. The Gemara says, first, that anything that happens to you in Aser Shemei Tshuva is still on the account of the previous year. The structure for the following year, for Tavshin Pei Vav, will happen from Moitzi Yom Kippur. Anything that happened from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur in Tavshin Pei Vav has to do with the mishpat that was created in Tavshin Pei Hey. Let's understand that. So 10 days from Rosh Hashanah Tavshin Pei Hey until Vav, until Yom Kippur Tavshin Pei Vav, those are the days where there is a restructuring and creating now the custom tailored structure through which there will be an interaction between you and God. Your health, your wealth, your pursuit of happiness, Baruch Nisu Begashmius. Okay? So at that point in time, when the contractor is still making the plans and setting up the structure, it's easier. It don't need a miracle. Okay, I view this who you are, so I will now custom tailor it to who you are. That's so the Ramchal explains this halacha that tefillah and tshuva and the Serasim tshuva, he's there now with you, custom tailoring your life according to what you are. That's the pshat in this Rambam. So the Rambam, again, I'm going to read source Gimel. Afal pisha tshuva v'atzaka yafa la'olam, all the repentance, and crying for help in that repentance. What's the added idea of crying for help for that repentance? That's Rabbeinu Yoina, Rises and Shari Tshuva, that God promises that a person that tries to do tshuva, God will help him more than what he normally could do on his own. All you do is you do your first step, do your best, and God will help you get further. You get an extra push. It's unbelievable. So that's the tzaka. You're going to get more than you know. Look, it's not that easy. It's actually quite hard to change your ways. But you have a certain amount of siyata d'shmaya through tefillah, which comes specifically in Aser Shemei Tshuva from Rosh Hashanah through Yom Kippur. So he says, Shene'emar Dirshu Hashem bi matzo. Once again, according to Ramchal, because it means he's there now structuring the interaction with you. B'medvar mamurim biyachid. When it comes to my private life, that's the way it is. Avo b'tzibur, here's something. It's often the Gemara. But b'tzibur, if it's a question of the tzibur, because man sha'isen tshuva v'tzaykim b'leivla shalom im nenim shenemek Hashem elokeinu v'chol kareinu elav. Now, this is a question. What do you mean, tzibur? We daven but tzibur. Are you davening for the tzibur or davening for the yochid? Between you, me, and the lamppost. What are you thinking about on Rosh Hashanah? What are you thinking about when you do tshuva? When you say the word slach lona avinu kicha Torah, are you thinking about, my name is MZ, my name is Jonathan, I'm Howard, I'm Phil, I'm Mendel, who am I? Or are you thinking about Klal Yisrael? That's the question on the table. Okay, tzibur means to say you're bit tzibur and you mispalo ala tzibur, because you see you as part of the tzibur. Therefore, it's a tzoros at tzibur, not a tzoros ayachid. The only reason the Kohen Gadol can say vidui chatu avu pashu amcha beis Yisrael is because he's part of a corporation called the tzibur, and you're part of that. To the extent that you're part of the tzibur, then the Kohen Gadol's vidui works for you. He's not a shaliach. He's simply part of the corporation. He's a major representative of the corporation. But for that, it has to be one body. The fact is metaphysically one body doesn't do. How is his vidui help for me? The answer is because me and him are one, and I consciously live that way, and that's what I pray for. I realize that my iniquities have affected the total body, not just my own self. I've infected the body of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, he, as a representative of that body, can now therefore confess for the iniquities which affected the Klal Yisrael. One has to understand that. So the Rama writes that Betzibur doesn't just mean good, Baruch Hashem, we'll say Slichas and it'll work. If you say Slichas and the people there together daven for the Tzibur and see themselves as a part of the Tzibur, then that Teshuva works. It's a very important Nakuda, which is very, very, very sensitive. Okay, so here we have that halacha. So we see in the Ram clear that this period of time is a specific value of tshuva, and to the extent that if you don't do it, you're a married b'malchus. What is the tshuva before we go further? This is what I referred to before. I want to read Rambam in source Dalit, Hilchos Tshuva Perek Gimel Halacha Dalit, last source on the right column. Rambam writes, Afal Pi Shadkiyas Shayfer. Shkias Berosh Hashanah Xeris HaKasuv. All the Tkiyas Shofar and Rosh Hashanah is Xeris HaKasuv. I say this because tomorrow, by meets tomorrow, Rosh Chodesh Aleph Elul, we start. The minig is to blow shofar for the same reason. Remez yesh, but there is a remez. Now this remez, I just want to add some, is not just a remez be'alma. According to the Ravan, that's the Iker Mitzvah. The Ravan writes, but when Avram brings this down in Hilchos Shofar, that the bracha and Tkiyas Shofar is not asher kitshana mitzvaysa v'tzvan l'shmaya koil shofar, which is what we do, but rather asher kitshana mitzvaysa v'tzivanu l'shmaya bikol shofar. And the Avram says, what do you mean l'shma bikol? It means to hear what it has to tell you. That's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to hear the sound. Obviously, according to the Ravan, it's not enough to hear the sound. The mitzvah is to hear what the sound has to tell you. So this remez of the Rambam is actually, according to the Ravan, Ikra Mitzvah. I suggest you look up this Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Shofar, Rosh Hashanah. The mitzvah is this remez, a very important thing. That's supposed to be the kavanah you're supposed to have when you hear the shofar. Just told you a very heavy thing that has to be taken into account. State the Rambam, what's the remez here? Uru yishenim mishnaschem. You people that are sleeping should wake up. Tardamim, those who are in slumber, hikitzu mitardamaschem, please wake up from your deep slumber. V'chipsu b'maasechem, the reason what it means, you're not. What does that mean to say? I'm asleep. It means to say when you're asleep, you're not functioning as a thinking person, and what's happening, you're living simply. The machine works on its own with your subconscious brain. Okay, we don't need your conscious brain for breathing. We don't need your conscious brain for your heart. We need your conscious brain only for decisions and thinking. When you're asleep, your conscious brain is just about not there, and therefore what's left is your subconscious brain. One has to understand that when we say that a person was given Tselem Elokim, Rambam explains he was given a conscious brain which can even think transcendent ideas. In other words, basically, your Tselem Elokim leaves you when you're asleep because you're only existing with your subconscious brain. Unless you're the type of person who thinks and learning when you're asleep, halavai. Okay, but I say that you think I'm joking. There was a Rosh Yeshiva, Chavani Yeshiva, Baron Koyet. So I remember my Rebbe Reb Zisla was his nephew. So he told me once they were walking in the street. Says, last night in my dream, I answered an unbelievable question of Reb Kiva. So Reb Zisla looked at him. What do you do in your sleep? Like hello. He looked back. What? You don't learn in your sleep? He didn't even understand what it means. That's it. That's the idea. Das is gelernt. Das is liegen and learn. And one has to sometimes. I never spoke to him, but Reb Zisla was his nephew, and he told me that he looked at him as if he was a batlin. How could you? What do you mean you don't learn in your sleep? Like, what kind of human being are you? Okay, that das is gelernt. I just want to teach the people that he's a Talmud Chacham. I always think I hope he dreams Taisvis. What I mean? If he dreams Taisvis, he's a Talmud Chacham. If not, he's playing Lego. We don't deal with those people. Anyway, this is the Derech Hagav. I haven't got there, but at least I saw what it was. You know what I mean? So I always tell my students, you don't have a teacher like that, but at least your teacher saw who it was. I saw what it looks like. So it's enough to say the other stuff, that's not it. What it is, I know. I saw it. It's a very important thing to remember. We shouldn't be lower covered at Torah. Is that what Torah is supposed to be? You're supposed to dream this. So this is what it says. But people usually live only with their subconscious self, and the subconscious self is only just basic functional, not transcendent ideas. Yetzelim Elokim is actually not active when you're asleep. And this is what he says, you're asleep, you're not thinking transcendent ideas, you're not thinking values. You live a life of pure function of food, clothing, and shelter, but your Tzelem Elokim is asleep. That's what he means to say. That's a dogma of Ur Yeshenim Mishinasrim, B'Tardemaschem, because your Tzelem Elokim, your capability of intelligence, transcendent thought, the idea of values which are not just functional, not just food and closure, is quite dormant. And that's what he says. You have to first wake up, start thinking. What's Rambam teach you? You want to do tshuva. First of all, think values. Decide that your values are your priorities. Only after you did that, then you can keep to masechin. You can do introspection. Do my actions fit my beliefs? Or to what extent do I really believe? Or is it just lip service? This is the question on the table. Because we live inconsistencies between our beliefs and our prayers and all the good things we call ourselves, and that's not what we do. So obviously it's begeder besvasam kibdumi ubelibam balimi pasuk navi. We honor him with our lips, with our actions, but our heart is not with him. That means to say it's external, and this is what he says. Chipsu masechem v'chizru b'tshuva v'zichru barachem. What did the Rambam add? The Rambam adds, the stage goes as follows. First of all, wake up equals start thinking. Thinking, I don't mean food, clothing, and shelter. Thinking about, I'll use it bluntly, me'ayin basa, la'ana tahaylech, and what's it all for? Okay, you have to ask, why am I alive? Then chipsu ba'asechem, it can't be because you're going to have another pizza or get yourself a nice Porsche. That's not the issue. The Porsche won't make you better or worse. Okay, guys, I told you, I bought 2 plots already. I checked the place. I don't know if they're even going to fit me in there, let alone whatever assets I have. They're not going with me. It's as simple as that. My old friend in London loves the more Lamborghinis. I once told him this. You know what I mean, Johnny? Big Talmud Chacham. They have the shoe factory. He likes them. I said, listen, Tzaddik, you can't fit it in the hole. It was Nafsa Lamborghini. It's not going to help you. He needs a green one, a red one. You know what I mean? This is the reality. So number 1, think. Number 2, introspection. Number 3, return from the introspection by doing what? Here's the answer. Zichru barachem. Will you please keep in mind that you have a creator? In other words, the Rambam was telling if you go revert, how does sin start? It starts with shikhu barachem. You forget your Lord. Ultimately, you do the wrong things. Ultimately, you don't even think about them anymore. And ultimately, you go back to thinking only about things which don't endanger your comfort zone, equals food, clothing, and shelter. You take the Rambam and go backwards. Understand where you fell and understand where you have to get to. The apex of tshuva is not just to say, I'm sorry, but to actually remembering your creator. One has to understand what each one of these words mean, but that's how you have to read a Rambam. Goodness sakes. The Rambam doesn't just write poetry. This is Rambam. Elu, who are the people that do this? Ela ashogchim es ha'emes. People who forget. What do you mean they forget? They never read. It means they don't bother to think. Okay? What is zikaron versus shikha? Zikaron means to say it's called the das, that something is connected to you. You're aware of it, and actually it becomes real for you. It's vivid and real. You have images of the past which lay in your subconscious, but they don't create an emotional reaction because you're not reliving it. You're only seeing it cerebrally. When you remember something, you're reliving something. You're bringing an image of the past into the present to the extent that once again creates an emotional reaction. Look, let's be honest. You ever been to a shiva house where people are reminiscing and talking about images of the past, and you can see the tears coming down? Yeah, real memory is something which doesn't just bring a cerebral picture, but that cerebral picture ends up to be what we call emotional intelligence, and therefore it creates an emotional reaction. It means you become consistent with it. You see this and you really, you feel the love or the care that you had for the person which was deceased. It's very simple. Okay? When we tell you Zichru Baruch means can you get an emotional intelligence, have an image of me being created by God? Do you ever think of that? When's the last time we looked in the mirror and said, oh, that over there, reflection of a body which was created by God? He's your creator. When's the last time we thought that way? So he says that is the Rambam is telling you this is the source of all downfall. That we're shocheach bar achem. He doesn't shocheach malkechem, not shocheach adonechem. His language is very accurate. Bar achem, the idea of not thinking yourself as a created form. See, that is where it hurts. And the answer is very simple, because you think yourself as a slave, for example. Slave has his own agenda, he just can't do it. He's tied down. If he runs away, he get his foot cut off. I don't know what, whatever it only be. It's like a horse. A horse, you need spurs to make him move in your direction. Okay? He's not a wagon, a slave. He's a horse. Not pleasant to say, but that's the dogma, what it is. He has his own agenda, but the chains tie him down to the other's agenda. That is the pure truth of the matter. I mean, we don't need too much to understand that. But when it comes to, you're saying, ani avdecha, and then you say, ani avdecha ben amosecha. What are you repeating there? Why are you saying, I'm your slave? I don't use the word servant because it's very sterile, and that's not what it means. And every Knani means a slave. Okay, we got to get used to those words. I'm your slave. If we know, I always say I'm a servant of the Lord. That could mean that you're a waiter in a restaurant. I'm a slave of the Lord. That means something totally different. Okay, so I'm not just a slave. I'm a slave born in slavery. That's what you just said. Ani avdecha ben amasecha. I'm not just a slave. I'm a slave born in slavery. You know what it is? Because a slave which was bought off the boat from I don't know where, from Guinea or from Ghana, he still has dreams of freedom. The slave born in slavery has much less of his own agenda. That's the world that he knows. That's the world he was born in. I have no other dreams of walking away from you. This is who I am. That's what avdecha ben amosecha means. I'm not just a slave. I'm a slave born in slavery. I wasn't taken off the boat, shackled in some river in Guinea and put into a slave boat. No, I am born into this, okay? But here's the cloud. But this is all slave. By definition, a human being has a sense of independence. And even the slave born in slavery, he's used to it. He doesn't dream so much. He doesn't think this freedom is an option for him. But still, he's the horse with the spur. You know what I mean? The idea of Boira means to say, to forget you're not my slave. You're my creation. I made you. I'm Dr. Frankenstein, and you're the thing, brother. Okay, you're programmed according to my agenda. You have no justification of existence outside of the justification of the person that created you. He created you for purpose A, for purpose B. So if you want to know how to live, figure out what the doctor that made you decided. And that's why the idea is Zichur Barachem, the idea, remember that you're a created form. So he says, who are the people sleeping, not living that way? Ela Shokchim Esa Emes. They forget the absolute truth. Emes means to say, as we know in my mind, is an Ilchis Yisoidei HaTorah Perek Aleph Halacha Beis. It doesn't just mean truth, it means the absolute truth. Okay? There's no relative truth here. It's an absolute truth. We are created forms. That's all we really are. Okay? And therefore, in the fog of time. Why is time called Hevel? It's a Ramban in the beginning of Koheles. The theme in Koheles, specifically in the first paragraph, not just the first paragraph, but heavily in the first paragraph, and continues all through the book. Hevel, 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 avolim omer ka'elis hakol hevel. Gam ze hevel, gam ze hevel. What does it mean, ze hevel? Hevel doesn't mean it's nothing. Hevel means to say it's a mist. So the Ramban explains it as Pirush and Kohelis. Hevel is like a fog. What's a fog? A fog, a very thick mist of drops of water that they would put together. It's like you're in a cloud. When you're in the cloud, you ever driving a heavy fog? Johnny, you remember reading about the Great Fog back in London? The Great Fog. I forget what year. There was a very big fog in London. People died. Okay? The Great Fog, is that something consistent, or is nothing more than water which needs the sun to evaporate it? The latter is the truth. But when you're in it, you think you're in a pea soup, and you think it's really, really consistent. Your life depends on it. But if you just shed some light on it, brother, there's some heat, it'll evaporate. Zokter, the Ramban, that's the Pshat Hevel. Don't say the world is nothing. Shtiyot. The world is something. Don't worry about it. It's there. You know what I mean? Let's face it, it's there. But understand it has no consistency. With a bit of intelligence, we'll shed light on it, it becomes something which is porous and not really meaningful. That's what it means. It's like a fog which can evaporate when you shed this, when the sun comes out, when the sun of knowledge and thinking comes out. This becomes puny. It becomes very, I would say, Lilliputian. You know, it's kleingeld. It's shtiyot. It's chabal al azman. It's not what people. You know, I was just in South Africa, and the most popular car is the Chinese car. And you know what the name of it is? It's spelled Chaval. Chaval. I was just there. The most popular Chinese car there today. It's called Chaval. I said, beautiful. I love the name. I'm surprised it's not some Israeli, but he had some joke and decided to call it that. But no, that's really good old Chinese. You know, Chaval, Ashod, Chaval al Azman. You know what I mean? You're wasting time. Buy a cheap car and get it done with. You know, as long as it works. You know, this is people. It's not a status symbol, but it works. That's why it's called Chaval. So this is the same thing. This is Hevel. This is what the Rambam says, that people fall asleep and don't think. And what do? And they lie into the mist, the fog of temporal reality. And therefore they are constantly lying all their years of life in things which are nothing more than mist and fog and have no real, true, absolute content. They're temporal realities. None of this temporal life will help you in the true future ultimately, and will not save you from anything in the true future. At the end of the day, it's God's agenda, and just having food, clothing, and shelter won't do it enough. Habitul nafshei seichem, look at your nefesh. What does that mean? Nefesh is the idea. What is nefesh? We know the Gemara says in Brachas that the neshama, that metaphysical body, has 5 expressions. It's called 5 names. That's why there are Hasidic communities, specifically in Chabad, that on a yortzeit they light 5 candles. Most people in shuls have 2 candles by the Amid. Why? Because of nefesh and ruach. Chaim Volozhin explains that those are the 2 aspects of the neshama which are expressed in immortal life. Nefesh is the life power, and ruach is the emotional profile and the mobility. So nefesh and ruach are expressed in your guf. Okay, it's nefesh ki techta. It doesn't say neshama ki techta. The other aspects of the neshama, which are neshama, chai, and yichida, they're not expressed in the guf. They're affected to a certain extent by the guf, but they're not expressed in the guf. That which experiences sin is nefesh and ruach. That's why the pasuk v'nichresu hanefashos ha'osos. Okay, nefesh ki techta. Adra, my neshama, I say every morning, is still pristine, pure. Elokai neshama shenasate bi Torah he. What do you mean? It's still Torah, brother dear. I filtered it up plenty. The answer is that Reb Chaim Volozhin, no, you did not. There's no trait in the neshama. Neshama doesn't experience the deficiencies. Only nefesh and ruach do. So this is what we say when he says specifically the lashon of the Rambam is so accurate. Habitul nafshei seichem. Look at what you've done with your life. What have you taken that aspect of the soul, which is the life power? So once you know the word, the language, it's so beautiful, so deep. Every word here. Habitol nafshe seichem. Look at your nefesh. Look exactly of what that life power, the nachalik of neshama. It's all based on Gemara and Brachas, which is basically expressed in life power. What have you done with this? You've taken a metaphysical entity which is expressed in life power in the body, and what have you done with it? I hate to say it, you spent your time on food, clothing, and shelter. Now, what does that mean? Those are two things. We have to be very accurate here. What is a derech, and what is your alila? Darkechem umal lechem. Again, the Rambam is not a poet. Every word means something. Derech is what? It's not. It's a Weltanschauung. It's the way you do, the way you see things, the path you are living on. The question is not the actions. The question is the path you're living on. And then there's also malechem, your alilos, your actions, your activities. So there's two things. Teshuva must deal not just with your with your actions, but also with the way of the lifestyle, the philosophy of life, the Weltanschauung that you're living through. These, and this is where he brings the pasuk. V'yazov kol echad mekem dalko umachshavto asher lo tova. You must walk away from this path and also walk away the way you think about things. Okay, you got to change your lifestyle, and thus think your values differently. Equals is because you're living a certain lifestyle with a certain philosophy of life. That's why you perceive things in a certain way, and that's why it reflects itself in your actions and your feelings. But if you decide to walk on another path totally, this will naturally generate another perception of reality, and ultimately your actions will be clear, will be good, and so will your thoughts. So the key is, if we look carefully, it is derech, leading to malalim. So here you have it. Rambam is telling us very clearly what tshuva is. Zichra barachem, you're not on the path of Zichra barachem. That is your problem. And since you're not on the path of Zichra barachem, therefore, it's not going to work. Tshuva demands entering a path of Zichra barachem, which will thus lead to Yazov, Kol Echad Rakor, Ra'o, Machshavto, etc. But first, the goal is not saying sorry for actions, it's changing your total perception of reality. I think the topic today was return to a religious mindset. Well, this is often a Rambam. I don't need any, we don't need any Shem Shmuels here, or all these other Polish Baba Mises. Old-fashioned Litvish Rambam. Okay, this is my Zayda learned in Volozhin, my father learned in Grodno. And I'm not learning for Rambam. Just have to be able to look at it. This is what the Rambam says. So this is a cloud gadol, and this is what Teshuva is supposed to do. Now, what does he say? If entering Lashon of the Rambam, lefichach, therefore. Now, where's the therefore? Therefore, since people are living in without brains, Rambam says you're simply living without thinking. You're what we call autopilot. You are sleeping. Your capability of transcendent thought is not being used. You're using functional thought. You and the local, I just came from the Kruger. So you understand, animals are brilliant in finding their food. They don't need too much for shelter, thank God, because the savanna grass takes what it takes. But they should, for protection, for existence, for survival, for food. Well, when you see that leopard go, brother, I can, if you really, I can show you some shots, Woo-hoo, like, you want to see like two leopards like on a tree eating their lunch of a nice little impala that they impaled. Okay, I got all that. Come to my house, Mishka V'Shmona, I'll show you some real shots. You know what I mean? But this is unbelievable, So the animal does that. You say, I don't mind telling you, a chaya, which is mahalach arba, is a healthy thing. The problem is we're chayos and mahalchei shnayim. All we think about is food, clothing, and shelter. They don't need the clothing. They have no problems with shelter. Elamai, the food. So we're more vulnerable. We need clothing and we need shelter. But this is a chayim mahalchei arba. That's what this is. You wouldn't make it in the savannah over there. Believe me. Okay, it's unbelievable. So what the Rambam says is, now since this is true that we're asleep, tzorich kol adam shira atzmo kol hashana kula ki'ilu chetzio zakai v'chetzio chayav. We should always look at himself as if the scales have not been tipped yet. V'chein kol ha'olam, and also the tzibur, is chetzio zakai, chetzio chayav. Chata chet echad hu echriet etzpo v'kol ha'olam kulo l'kaf chova v'gorem lo means to himself and to the world hashchata. Mitzvah echat harei echriet atzmo v'kol ha'olam kulo l'kaf zchut v'garam lo v'lahem tshuva v'atzalah shene'emar b'tzadik yesod olam. Tzaddik doesn't mean to say the Heilige Rebbe, a person which did something righteous. Tzaddak, that which did something righteous. You put on tefillin, you daven with the kavanah, you helped an old lady cross the street, you actually bought those non-kosher Girl Scout cookies for the girls and made them happy. Okay, then you threw it out, I hope. But at least you made them happy. That's called tzaddak. Since you did that, now, I don't understand. So what does this have to do with what he said before? Where's the lefichach? I'm asking a question. I'd like to hear suggestions. The Rambam started by telling us that people live in slumber. Then he said people live in slumber, and the shofar is to waken you up. Obviously, it doesn't mean just to wake you up on Rosh Hashanah. That's a bit too late. It means to wake you up the whole year. That's what it means. It's a wake-up call, which hopefully you'll be up. Okay? Therefore, since you know that you have to be up, and when you're not the right place because you're asleep, what does he say? Therefore, a person should see himself as if he can tip the scales. What does B have to do with A? And then the Rambam goes further. And because of this issue, what do we say? Because people are in slumber, and everything we do can be detrimental to ourselves and to the world all year. Now, Bet Yisrael arbot b'tzedakah u'ma'asim tovim v'lasok b'mitzvot miRosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim yeser mikol hashana. What does that have to do with anything? Here he doesn't. It's not. This is Perik Gimel. It's not Perik Beis, where it discusses the idea of this is the days of Teshuva, which was Kabbalas Miyad. He says specifically that people from this point of time to Yom Kippur do more. Why? Because before he describes it's worth it. Now he describes they have to do it because this is the time that they are judging. The scales are there now. This is the time of the scales. And the scales happen specifically at this point of time. Therefore, since we just mentioned that you can tip scales for yourself and for the world, therefore, usually on these 10 days, we try to find more schiyot and tzedakah and ma'asim tovim. Nagu kulam. This is kulam because the Ran already in Rosh Hashanah brings that the minig in Sfarad was and Spain was that we come from Rosh Chodesh Elul to do slichais, but here he reads kulam, but everybody, including the Ashkenazic world, lakum belayla basar yomim ela, to wake up at night. Lakum means you went to sleep, and to wake up before the nets. That's what it means balayla. Okay, not the way people today do slichas at 8 o'clock in the morning or at 10:30 at night. That's not what was the custom. You want that's something else. I'm not going there. I don't want to go there. Why should I say negative things? But you read Rambam and understand what you're supposed to do. Lakum balayla. I mean, you have to wake up by Alois. It gives you roughly an hour before nets. Basar yomim elo uispal b'batei knisiyos, and to pray in houses of prayer. B'divrei tachnunim, beseeching, b'kibushim, and things which will make you very, also which is musar ad sheya'ar hayom. So you must pray. Divrei tachnunim v'kibushim equals. I suggest we prepare our shlichus well and only say those that we understand. I personally do not say Ashkenazi slichos because I have a hard time understanding them. I do a Dota Mizrach. It's repetitive every day, and it's a nice, simple Hebrew, and I understand it. I want to fulfill the Rambam. So here's one of the few places in my life which I diverted from the custom of my forefathers. Maybe they understood that. I have a hard time. And I found that this like quite a few years ago, I found that I can identify with the Sephardi Slichos because it makes sense to me. And then every day it gets better. It's also a bit more optimistic. I don't know if you're aware of it. Just the music of the Sephardi davening is so much more optimistic. Like I feel the Ashkenazim, man, they're depressant. I think they suffered the trauma of the Crusades and they haven't got out of it, as opposed to the Sfardim. It's much more optimistic, and I guess I need that. I don't. You may not, so it's okay. If you're blue blood Litvaks, maybe you can do with the depressant. I prefer having something a little more light. Anyway, so what do we see from Rambam? We see from Rambam, remembering one thing: the goal of tshuva. In so far, we learned kama v'kama yisodos. So I want to put them all together. In the area, I saw the machayev of tshuva is kabbalas oil malchus shemayim, and the lack of tshuva means you're a pyrik oil malchus shemayim. That's number one. From the Rambam, I also learned that the source of sin is we forget our Creator. And the idea of repentance is return to an awareness that there's a creator and you're created. So those two things fit hand in glove, the kingdom of God and the creator. Let's put that together and try to understand the two aspects of there. The source of sin is Pyrik Oil Malchus Shemayim. The Chiyuv of Tshuva is Kabbalas Oil Malchus Shemayim. The source of sin is Shikchas HaBoirei, and the ultimate goal of Tshuva is Chiras HaBoirei. That's the Lashon of the Rambam. Now, what exactly happens by Shikras HaBoirei? According to Rambam, we fall asleep and stop thinking about God's agenda. We think about our own, which is very temporal. It's Hevel, and that's food, clothing, and shelter, and pleasure, and so on and so forth. And we stop thinking about it's His creation, what's His agenda, and we can look Him up. Are we living with His agenda? That's the real question on the table. And that's the Pishpush B'maisim. Well, hello, that's what you have to figure out what it's all about. We also learned that we have to do tshuva not just on our action, but more so on our Weltanschauung, on how what is the path we're leading? Where are you going with life? That's an interesting question. Where are you going with life? And this is another Rambam. I'm going to take it a little further to the fifth source, which is Rambam and Hilchos Tshuva Perek Zayin. We're learning a few Rambams today. Al Tomar, do not say, She'ein tshuva ela ma'avirot. Don't think that tshuva is only from sins. Sheyesh b'maaseh, active sins. Kigon, znus, gezel, ugneva. Okay? Any gezel will include any act of having other people's money, even, so to speak, even if you didn't go and hide, but you simply decide not to pay it. For example, not paying a loan is called gezel. That's a Rashi. Not paying a worker on time will be loisashoik, which the Gemara B'Metzia says is a parallel to gezel. Using office time for your phone line for your own work, that's gezel. I'm just pointing out. So let's be honest. I think most of us somehow fall into that little category. They translate gezel as robbery versus theft. Gneva being theft and but it's actually not accurate. In halachic zela is any having other people's money and not allowing them to have it, even if it is that wasn't theft. Okay, but even the idea of kovish halvasa is a gazlan. It's a fush Rashi and Gittel Amidvav, and so on and so forth. These are all a part of gezel. So gezel and gneva are two separate things. I don't think too many people deal with Geneva, but Gezel is pretty bad. And Znus, Geneva. Now, Zus doesn't have to be Dafka with mice. Zus can also be with Einayim. It depends what you do with your eyes when you walk in the streets or you surf the net. Just as man has to revert back from these activities which are iniquities, what does de'ot mean in Rambam? Well, here it's very important to understand. The Rambam, all through his book, specifically in Hilchos Deos, calls midos deos. For example, anger is called the de'ah ra'ah. Gaiva is called the De'at Ra'ah. If you read Pirush HaMishnah of Rambam and Pirkei Avos or Shmona Prakim, or if you read Rambam Hilchos Deos, you will see that. Now, why does he call it Deos? And what does the word midos mean versus Deos? What does the word midah mean? Midah is a measurement. That's what it means. Why do we call your emotional profile your midos? No, Hope you thought about it. Well, the answer is because it's a measured reaction to a perception of reality. Every time that you act in a certain psychological way, you're reacting to your perception of reality. If somehow you have it in your mind that you're not just special, but you are superior, you will act in a haughty way. If you will not feel superior, but you will feel, you don't have to be equal, but not superior. You are different than somebody else, and that's what you uniquely are. Everyone is different, but no one is more superior than the other. For where you're all playing the cards against God, which is what each one of us individually into this world for His purpose. So then you will be you will never act in a haughty way. You will be actually humble. I didn't say meek. If you felt less than other people, you would be meek. But I think the Christians have this prayer of blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit. It's the Lord's Prayer, actually. No, I don't think that you need to be meek. You have to be humble. Moshe Rabbeinu knew his value, believe me. He was no shepsole. When people challenged him, he dumped them into the earth, i.e. koirach. You know what I mean? No, and when he was angry, he blew his lid, ayin, iron, akayin, etc. No, by Shimona Hamorim, by Meriva. He knew how to be angry. He actually had a bit of a problem, according to my mind. Is the reason he didn't come to get into Eretz Yisrael because he lost it too often. He had an anger problem. It's interesting. That's the Rambam Amar in Nevuchim. He describes that's a deficiency in Moshe Rabbeinu. But at the end of the day, there's a big deal. He was not meek. Like, he would not fit with Jesus's prayer. He was humble, the pasuk says. Humble means to say you don't see yourself superior, you see yourself uniquely you versus God, and you're not better or worse than anything else. You are who you are, and you're a vehicle of God's covenant in this world, and you have to fill your obligations and fill your potential. I'm not going to be the gra. It's too late. You know, when I was a little baby, I thought, but then you grew up, you realize, sorry, Chicago, Cubs, Ernie Banks. The gra didn't have that. He also didn't know Bob Dylan and didn't know who the Who was. So I guess, what can I do? I was supposed to be a Cubs fan, and I was supposed to go Comiskey to the park over there. What's it called? Wrigley Field. No lights. Okay. You know, that was me. Sorry. So I wasn't supposed to be the gra. I was supposed to teach in this little place called KBY. I guess I had to know who the Who was, and I had to know who Dylan was. And I don't just mean Dylan Thomas. I had to know that too, but not for KBY. Then I had to be married. Intelligent people have to know that too. But at the end of the day, yes, every person is different. You are giving your life and your capabilities to be covered Shemaim through your life in this world. Am I better than anybody else? No. Am I worse than everybody else? No. Am I filling my potential? That's my issue between me and God. So humility does not mean meek. Humility means you're not superior. You're not competing with anybody else. Therefore, you never see yourself better or worse. You're competing with your potential. That's true. You're playing against the house. This is not a poker game where there's people at the table. You're playing with the croupier. You know, you're playing, that's how you're playing. You know, the cards are dealt by the table and you're dealing with the table. This is what's happening. So the cloud is, people have to understand that that's why, so you are haughty because you feel superior. A midah is nothing more than a measured reaction to your perception. The Rambam therefore goes to the core of things. He says you don't fix reactions. You fix the reason of reactions, which are the deos, the perceptions. So the Rambam, when he talks about gaiva, he doesn't call it a midah, he calls it a deya. Because what's the core of that reaction? Your reactions are correct. Your perceptions are off the charts. You don't fix midos, you fix the core of the midos, which is the deyos. That's what the Rambam says over here. You have to fix also your deyos roars, your evil perception, which therefore have expressed in your reactions, what you call today interactive midos, which are nothing more than measured reactions to a warped perception. Therefore, you must revert back from this idea. Whatever, don't buy these books on how to handle your anger. Analyze what makes you angry and why. That's what he's telling you. You have to fix the deya. Umina eva. Why do you hate people? Why do you hate things? Oh, control your hate. Not a question, control your hate. Why do you hate? And fix that. Uminakina. Why are you jealous? Ask yourself. And the answer is you're competing with the other fellow in your mind. And he has something which you feel belongs to your profile. Therefore, you feel he's somehow destroyed your unique identity because he wears the tie that you think you should be having, or he has the Lexus that you should be having. No. You have to come down to brass tacks of what your real personality is and who you are. Why do you care about somebody else? Not really interested. Sometimes people ask me, but what happened in Shul today? So nothing. There was Kriyas Torah and Tefillah. But what's new? I don't know. Why would I care? Why would you care? You have to care about your zitz and daven and learn. What do you care? If a guy talks to you, you should help him. If you're interested. You know, why do people go to Shul to find out what's Herzach? I know I get these questions every so often. I don't understand them. And this is what this is. You have to fix your midos. You have to fix your deyos. Minakina, uminach, hitul. The idea of everything, these jokers in Shul, okay, that everything is a crack. Well, what is this? When we're difas hamamayim, v'akavayid, when we're difas hamacholos, people are obsessed with food. V'keyotze b'minakol tzarich lazer b'tshuva. This is called this is even the symptoms of the derech. What derech allows all these things to be happening? What Weltanschauung, what priority list, what goal of existence allows all these to become dominant in our lives? The Rambam is telling you something very important. Teshuva is not about actions. It's about the way you perceive reality. And the key is you're a created form. If you're a created form, then you can start figuring out why do you exist and ultimately what a reality has to fit with that. But until you realize you're a created form of a creator, you may be even an Eved of a Melech, but brother dear, you'll have your own agenda. And you'll be a Merid b'Malchus. Then the Rambam continues and says, "Akol tzorich lazer b'tshuva ve'ela avonos kashi mi'oisan sheyesh ben ma'isa." These avonos, these iniquities, are harder than the ones of just not eating kosher, seeking lashon hara, or not having krishma bisman. Shebizman shadam nishka be'ela. Once you're stuck in the rut of this way of life, of these, that's very hard to change. The Omer now he brings the pasuk for this. This is the famous pasuk of Re'azov, Rashad Darko, V'ish Oven Machshevo Sav. Going back to that, he says, the idea is you have to walk away from the path which leads these things happening. I think that should be enough for today. We will continue Bli Neder, was it in 2 weeks? Okay, bracha v'atzlacha. Have a meaningful month. I'm gonna use it. It's a very, very special month. In Nebuch, people don't use it. Please, please, please use the month. Great seeing you all. Bracha v'atzlacha.